How you doing, guys? As you know, I had actually I've harvested a lot of the lettuce and stuff that was in the aquaponics system here, and I'll do an update on the system as a whole pretty soon. Right now I've got some peppers growing in there, the okra's doing pretty well. I'm switching to some colder weather crops that I'll probably be replanting here soon as we get into winter here in Florida. Got some rosemary, but what I wanted to go over was the potatoes. I actually had some potatoes that were planted in here, and some sweet potatoes, and I know that you can't really grow root crops in the gravel. What I wanted to experiment with was having the vine come out and go into a separate container. But I was going to let these grow a little bit while longer, but I had an infestation of squirrels that finally discovered that the sweet potato leaves were delicious, and they absolutely ravaged these things to the point where they're actually, on this side, even ate the potato and just ate it completely. The one that was growing it, and disconnected the vine completely. This was up here like this, growing into this pot on this side. And now my potato here is completely chewed up. Let's see if I can dig it up. It's not easy, it's got a nice root system in there. I don't know if I'll be able to get it. I may have to set the camera down. But regardless, I'm going to dig in these off, these separate bins that I have the vines going into, and see if we were able to grow some potatoes in there. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to eat this one. It's been soggy in there the whole time, but I guess theoretically you could. It even has other little potatoes growing off there. Interesting. Let's see what else we have in here. Oh, it does seem to have grown an actual root. Yeah, that's tough to get out of there though. Seems to have grown a bunch of little ones. So obviously it is growing roots, but that's not really potatoes that you can eat. But we did have a here that looked like they got some decent size things. Very interesting. So it grows some tiny little potatoes. So that's not too bad for growing in the gravel. Maybe if you had some lighter gravel like the Hydroton or something, it would have actually been able to grow a bigger tuber. Here's the other one on this side. Squirrels hadn't managed to actually shoot a potato yet. And actually part of this, I believe this one, I didn't even stick a potato in here. I just took a piece of the vine and laid it. It had already had some roots growing off of it. So it's basically like a potato slip. So we'll see if that actually had any growth of any root system in there. There's some thick taproot, but I don't think it grew any actual potatoes. Definitely have some substantial roots there. It thickened up a little bit, but never got to the point of what you consider an actual potato. Oh yeah, there we go. So as you can see from the size of my hand, these aren't big, but this container wasn't very big either. There's another little guy right here. I'm going to turn this off a second and dig the rest up. Alright, this was much better than I expected. Just from this one bucket, which is maybe 5-gallon bucket, maybe slightly bigger. It was only about half full with just straight up leaves and leaf litter. From one vine coming off the aquaponics, I got this stack of potatoes, which I'll weigh it and see, but it's at least 2 to 3 pounds, maybe more. And that was pretty a half-assed attempt where I just had the vine, and this vine is actually came out of here, where I could have contained it in there, more like I did on the other side here, and continued to bury it. This one came out and was all over the ground, so there's probably even some more on the ground. These were the ones that came up where the vine touched the ground. As you can see, they're not big. I think this is mostly due to a factor of them just not being in the ground very long, because it took quite a while for the vine, not that long, but it obviously took longer for the vine to get bigger. And so the first spot it had touched the ground were these, which are basically edible size. So you can imagine that if these were in the ground longer, all these different spots would have been much larger potatoes. Especially if I didn't even bother to cover them. So if any time it's touching the ground and you just put a big lump of dirt on them, you're going to be able to grow the roots much quicker there too. So that's pretty impressive. And you got all this biomass too of these vines. And as a squirrel, motherfucking squirrels found out the greens, which are edible too. You could have been harvesting them the whole time. So this is everything that came out of the one potato in the aquaponics system, with the vine going over the edge, in what I would consider a totally less than ideal setup. Because first of all, this container was small. It was very far away from the potato up here, so it had to grow a lot of vine before it ever started growing tubers. I didn't even finish covering it, and I let the vine grow out into the ground instead of just growing it in there and burying it. So I think that could have been a lot improved, and I still had a fairly decent harvest on one potato plant. So now I'm going to go check out on this side where I at least contained all the vine. This was, I believe, two different vines, but they came off the same slip. And but I did do a better job of containing all the vines in here and continuing to bury them. So we'll see what comes out of this one. Alright, so this is all I got out of that entire side, which in my opinion, originally had been done a lot more appropriately for what I was intending. But I have an opinion on why I think this other side turned out better, even though I initially thought this is more of what the method I was going for. Just found two more, but I only found them at the exact first spot that the vine entered the ground, which kind of bolsters a theory that I've been thinking about. So the potatoes that I had on the side with the black container, where it just was one vine going straight in there and then coming back out, actually had much better production than the other side. That whole basket, I only had like 2 or 3 small potatoes in that entire thing, and there's a couple reasons why I think this is the case. And actually I thought that huge one would have done better because I had a lot more vine buried in there. But I think what happens is in most situations it seems like where the potato first goes into the ground has the most production of the potatoes itself. And not just from, like, it was coming out of the aquaponics, so not literally where the main root system was, but just where it first went into the actual ground. And then after that, on the other side, I just continued to bury it. And it seems like if the vine thinks that it just needs to get out of the dirt and keep growing, that it won't create as much of a potato root system beneath the surface. So it's just kind of like my theory. So, and also I think the leaves didn't quite spur the growth quite as much as actual dirt or even just sand would. It was mostly just like sandy compost in the other bucket. It wasn't even really rich compost. It was just leaves and a lot of sand. So a lot more like actual dirt. Whereas the leaves are kind of a little bit too airy, I think, for it to really start growing in there. So next time I'm going to try and experiment, and instead of just trying to bury as much of the vine as possible, specifically covering the parts where the roots come out of, and then letting the vine come up out of the ground, and then covering again everywhere it touches the ground, and see how that works, as opposed to just continuing to cover. Because I think when I did that, the vine just kept trying to grow to get light and everything, and didn't actually enhance the root system. So, and also in the compost pile next to my fence, where it wasn't involved in aquaponics at all, I just buried a bunch of potatoes. Didn't really have a whole lot of, there were potatoes in there, but it wasn't as successful as I hoped. I think mostly because I just took a lot of the smaller potatoes from my harvest last time and stuck them directly in the ground. So the plant just grew out of that potato, and some roots grew out of it as well, but it never really had the need to grow more potatoes off of that. So I'm going to grow a lot more of them off of slips next time, which are just pieces of the vine that have grown roots out of it, because then they'll actually be required to grow a much more substantial root system out of that. So definitely have shown that you can grow potatoes out of an aquaponics system if you have an external container for the root system to grow in, which is kind of a cool discovery. And I think if I tweak it, I can get to where I can grow a lot of them out of that. So next time I'll give it a shot and see what happens.